Fucking every hole. Fucking every hole. Fucking every hole.
Oh, that's it. There it is.
Tell me your name, where you're from.
Nate Sexton, Eugene, Oregon.
Nice shot, Nate.
Inbounds Disc Golf, your best source for disc flight information. We developed the most comprehensive and complete universal flight chart available. Available online and in paperback, our in-flight guide contains over 390 discs, with new discs being added regularly. Simple and easy to use, this flight guide displays up to 4 discs, side by side for comparisons. Use Inbounds Disc Golf's relative stability scale to make the disc flight pattern easy to understand. How should your disc fly? Find out at inboundsdiscgolf.com.
Greetings, and welcome to the 50th episode of Disc Golf Live Video Magazine. During this spin around the disc golfing scene, we'll focus on action from this past summer's PDGA World Championships. We've also got contributions to share from the Guardians of Recreation and Disc Golf Me TV. We'll get started in just a moment.
Production and distribution of Disc Golf Live is made possible through the generous support of our underwriters. Thanks for your support.
We'll start this show off with some action from this past summer's PDGA World Championships, where an astounding 14 courses were in play by a field well in excess of 1,000 players. For first round action, our crew sought out a venue with a wide variety of players.
All right, it's Tuesday morning here at the 2012 PDGA World Championships. We start our coverage out today here on hole 6 at Eastway. Pin is up around the corner to the right. The horn has sounded and we are underway here. All right, all across Charlotte this morning, we're teeing off to start the 2012 PDGA World Disc Golf Championships. We're on hole 6 here at Eastway. Hold the place uphill and to the right. Playing in this pool are some of the masters men, the masters and grandmasters women, junior boys and girls under 10, and junior boys and girls under 13. Nice start. Since this is the opening tournament round, there were no established lead cards to follow in any division. The first few groups are in the men's pro masters division for guys 40 and over. The majority of the pro masters players were on another course called Nevin Park this morning. They'll be playing here in the afternoon. When we get to later round footage in future episodes, we'll be able to pick up divisional leaders and follow them for a few holes before moving on to footage from the finals. But for today, our plan was to shoot the whole course full of players as they move through a couple select holes. Getting underway is a big step for everyone here. Preparation and planning as a competitor for a tournament like this is a long and drawn-out process, and these guys can't wait to finally get the competition underway. 6 rounds over 4 days are scheduled before the Saturday finals, with some divisions even sneaking in a semifinal round early Saturday. Altogether, there are 96 players in the men's masters division, out of 390 total professional players. Pete, he takes no time. The amateur side boasts over 700 players. This is the last group of masters we'll be seeing today. These fellas teed off on hole 1. Birdies on number 6 have proven few and far between today for these guys. But this tournament is such a long haul, it's important not to get too down or too excited over any particular hole. We got back to our post as the first group of miniature golfers was already underway. Incoming. Taping the little ones can get a bit tricky. These first kids are among the under 10 age divisions. Ooh. Time for a change of venue. We switched over to hole 5 here at Eastway. Please. Over a gap to an elevated pin. This hole is a fitting example of the sort of perils facing players on the various Charlotte area courses. Lots of trees, tiny gaps, and often rugged fairways. The design team is fond of building elevated pin positions. There's a dry creek bed running the width of this fairway that's out of bounds, making things all the harder. Combine an elevated tee with OB, mix in a forest of trees, and this is what you get. Isn't that kind of that young man? He rolled out of bounds after a fine putt.
Ooh, these kids can play.
And they don't pull any punches for the youngsters. No far-up kids' tees, even for the youngest tykes. They may be young, but these little ones can certainly play. And when the going gets rough, as it will throughout the week, these young players handle it in stride. No major grumbling out of this gang. We applaud these players and their positive outlook on the course. Just watch this crew tackle the daunting tee shot here on number 5 at Eastway. No profanity horn necessary here. We'd have worn that sucker out with some adult divisions. Go get them, fellas.
Okay, let's see how I can measure this thing.
Get through.
There you go, through.
Keep going.
Might not be that fast. Oh my god.
Someone leave the water back there?
World Championships usually draw a group of traveling junior players, along with a number of more local players, taking advantage perhaps of a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to play in a big event right at home. Nice little putt. Happy little guy. This is typically the largest field of the year for many youth, as well as a chance to renew friendships and meet other players.
Good.
At smaller events, there are often only a few juniors, and the opportunity to go up against a sizable group is a rare treat. This little fellow just made a shot. He was hiding. We couldn't even see him getting ready to shoot. Sorry about that, fella. not just getting to the basket that matters in Charlotte. Getting in the basket is a whole battle unto itself. Rollaways into out of bounds are not unique to this hole or this course. Where there's not enough natural trouble on the Charlotte courses, they build some. Then they string some out of bounds rope just to make sure. Well, good finish. This course was installed in 2010, one of a string of new courses completed for this tournament. Stan McDaniel was the primary designer.
Nice shampoo.
There are some open holes to balance the woodsy ones, and a set of long tees for some holes. The amateur tees play 5,500 feet. It's 7,100 feet from the longer pro tees.
Good shot.
A little mark from being down in an OB ravine. Having the kids on this course was a scheduling bonus. Our main goal of the day was taping the professional women, who will be along shortly. But the juniors are always a treat to watch. Elsewhere around Charlotte, the under 16 and under 19 divisions are also getting started for boys and girls. You moms and dads out there looking for a great way to spend some time with your kids might consider getting out together for some disc golf. Speaking of moms, it's about time for the anticipated women's professional divisions to come through. Veteran Annie Kreml has honors, not surprisingly. This Californian has 4 world singles titles on her shelf and is looking to add a 5th. There are 7 grandmasters women playing worlds, joined here by 8 gals in the masters division. Players are eligible to play as masters at age 40. At a half century, players can enter as grandmasters. Elsewhere in Charlotte this morning were dozens of ladies in corresponding amateur divisions. The ravine turns a tough hole into a really tough one. There's Annie recovering a fellow competitor's out-of-bounds disc. Chivalry is not dead. More OB troubles on the creek. The bare slope leading up to the basket offers little by way of sure footing. Just getting a steady stance is a big challenge here. If you've got good karma, though, you might just land near the footbridge. That's a good toot.
Pretty. Very nice.
The next quartet had a little less trouble with the ravine. Good enough to card a few pars and a birdie.
Look at that. Wow.
Fantastic.
How beautiful is that? You hit the island. Oh yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Nice job.
Nice.
There you go.
All right, now drive of the day here so far, number 5. Should be pretty routine. Nicely done. Just like the junior divisions, the smaller adult pro divisions are rarely contested at typical weekend tournaments. During such events, the various pro women often play in a single division, sometimes a masters division as well. But here at Worlds, all age-protected divisions are offered, and the divisional sizes are rivaled only perhaps by select women-only events. Here's a player viewers may recognize from our coverage of one such event.
Oh yeah. Nice, Sue.
Nice. Yay! Team Luna.
Sue Stevens was all over our Just Girls Gone Wild coverage this past spring. We'll see her again when we edit up our footage from this year's This Girl's Gone Wild. Trouble off the tee is amplified on this hole by the specter of the ravine on subsequent shots.
Oh, safe.
It kind of surprised us that this shaggy area wasn't more closely cropped. We saw a couple shots saved from OB there, almost mercifully. It's like the course designer has a glimmer of a heart after all. Thanks, Stan. Nice 2 by Sue Stevens. This is a look up at the basket for hole 4 from down here in number 5. A lot of elevation, this little spot. For a nice perspective on the elevation changes, we stayed down at the basket to shoot the final group. We'll see where that nestled. It may have gone down into the creek. Sheila Kirkham plays out of New Mexico. She's been a longtime provider of Disc Golf Live for local broadcast in Albuquerque at the quote-unquote station. Hopefully the city folks in Albuquerque get their heads out of the sand and return quote-unquote to full operation as the voice of the local community. This rescue shot from the deep rough led to a putt for a great par save. Sometimes you just have to let it all out.
Get it. Oh, I'm sorry.
Over the next few episodes, we'll be following a variety of divisions through different courses at Worlds 2012 in Charlotte. Later this episode, we'll have more from the divisions we've already seen today, plus a few others, as we take a look at a portion of our final round footage. Next up on Disc Golf Live, a piece from our longtime contributors, the Guardians of Recreation. Four out of 5 dentists surveyed recommend Lunadiscs for their patients who throw discs. Get yours at teamlunadisc.com.
If you Google disc golf, the first and most viewed video you'll see will be by the Guardians of Recreation. We included that video in an early episode, and we've been featuring occasional Guardian contributions ever since. Here's a sample from their more serious side called How Discs Fly.
We gonna do this. We gonna do this.
Most beginners throw their discs off to the left, or up in the air and then off to the left.
Come on. Yeah.
Understanding how discs fly can make disc golf a lot easier and more fun.
It's like that.
Let's look at the different types of golf discs, how they fly, where to use certain discs, and how the weight and the wind will affect their flight. After all that, you should be able to select the right disc for the shot you'd like to throw. To keep this as short as possible, we'll assume you are throwing with your right hand, using a backhand shot. If you throw with your left hand, or use a forehand shot, just reverse everything you see here. There are different types of discs for different types of shots. You might want to start out using only 1 or 2 user-friendly discs until you get the general idea. Then you can begin throwing some of the higher speed discs with a little bit of knowledge. Some of these high-speed discs are much harder to throw, and they can be very discouraging if that's what you're using to learn with. A typical disc golf starter set might consist of 3 discs, a driver, a mid-range, and a putter. Golf discs have a beveled edge that generally defines what the disc is best used for. The sharp-edged discs will cut through the wind faster and go farther. These are called drivers, just like traditional golf. Mid-range discs have a more blunted edge than the drivers. They won't fly as far, but they tend to fly straighter than most drivers. Putters have the widest and roundest edge. They are generally used for close-up shots. They won't go anywhere near as far as drivers, but they do tend to fly straight, even when they are not thrown hard. Now let's use a backhand throw to illustrate a typical disc flight. We'll start with a driver. Notice how the disc starts out straight, then turns to the left as it begins to slow down at the end of its flight. For a beginner, most drivers will generally have more early left-hand turn than a mid-range or a putter, especially if they're not thrown very hard. A mid-range disc will also turn left as it slows down, but it should hold a straight line longer. It won't go as far as a driver, but will generally fly straight over the early part of its flight. A putter will fly even straighter, but it may still fade left at the end of its flight. The word stable is used to describe a disc that is designed to fly straight. Some discs are designed to be overstable. An overstable disc will fade off to the left fairly quickly, unless they are thrown hard. There are certain discs that are understable. That means they are designed to turn over to the right instead of the left during the early part of their flight. In some cases, understable discs will still fade off to the left at the end of their flight. You can use an understable disc when you want to turn your disc over to the right using a backhand throw. There are speed and stability charts on the web that describe all of the flight characteristics of every single disc known to man. The discs are arranged on horizontal and vertical axes to indicate how each disc will fly at a specific speed. The left-right axis represents the stability of each disc. For example, discs on the left side of the chart are considered overstable. For a beginner, this means that they will typically fade hard to the left early in their flight unless they are thrown with a lot of power or speed. The stable discs in the center of the chart should fly more or less straight. They will still fade a little bit at the end, but should maintain a straighter line over most of their flight. The understable discs on the far right side of the chart are designed to turn over to the right if you throw them hard enough. The other important part of these charts is indicated by the vertical axis. At the bottom of the chart are the slowest speed discs. Slow speed discs require much less power to throw them the way they are designed to fly. The high speed discs at the top of the chart will go much faster and much farther, and everyone wants that, right? The only problem is that high speed discs require a lot of power or speed to throw them straight. For example, if you only have enough power to throw 200 feet, which may be pretty far for a beginner, any attempt to throw a high-speed disc from the top of the chart will probably fade early and hard to the left. Until you can throw around 300 feet or more, you should stick to the discs in the lower section of the chart. Lower speed, stable discs are much easier to throw straight and will keep you out of trouble. Some disc selection charts include a 4-number series that provides more details on high-speed stability and early and late fade of the disc to help you match your power level to your specific needs. You can study these charts to learn more about any disc you select, but the important thing for beginners is to stay within your power or speed range and choose the disc stability that allows you to control the disc the way you want. The flight of any disc will be greatly affected by how hard or how fast you throw the disc. If an overstable disc is thrown really hard, it won't start fading off to the left for considerably longer than if it was thrown with less power or spin. As you develop more speed, you can throw overstable discs straighter. For example, when you throw this overstable disc with a medium amount of speed, it will fade to the left fairly quickly. But if you throw that same overstable disc with a lot of power, notice how it goes straight for quite a ways before it starts to fade off to the left. When you do start to gain more speed, you can eventually overpower certain discs and make them turn over to the right instead of to the left. Beginners should start out with lower speed, stable, or understable flying discs until they develop enough power to turn these discs over to the right. At that point, you may want to upgrade to slightly more stable, higher speed discs. The lower speed discs that you learned on will still come in handy for specific shots that you have already mastered. Disc weight will also have an effect on how a particular disc will fly. For example, if you throw the same style of disc that weighs 10 or even 20 grams less, you'll notice that it probably won't fade quite as quickly as the heavier version of that same disc. There are lightweight models of most discs. If you find a disc that you like, but want one that has a little less early fade, you can choose a lighter version of that same disc to compensate for your power level. As you develop more power, you may need to change discs to compensate. When you start to overpower your favorite disc and turn it over to the right, you could use a heavier version of the same disc to keep it from turning over quite as easily. Or you can choose a different disc that is slightly more stable so you don't turn it over to the right as easily. Throwing downhill will cause a disc to fly faster. Once again, whenever a disc is thrown with more speed or power, it will act differently. The additional wind speed will counteract the natural left-hand fade of the disc and cause it to fly straight for longer. A downhill throw could also turn over completely if the increased downhill speed overcomes the stability of that particular disc. That's why you might want to use a slightly more stable disc when you throw downhill. Wind direction will also affect how a disc will fly. When you throw directly into the wind, your disc will think it's flying faster because of the additional wind hitting its face. Depending on how much headwind there is, your disc might even turn over completely. Whenever you throw into a headwind, you should choose a disc that is more stable, so that it doesn't turn over to the right. An understable disc, thrown directly into the wind, will likely turn over and dive right into the ground. You might think that a wind at your back would increase the distance of the flight. That's pretty much the opposite of what happens. Wind at your back tends to blow the disc down to the ground. To compensate for a tailwind, you may want to aim slightly higher, but watch out that the disc doesn't get too high up in the air, where it can get blown away by the wind. Lightweight discs will be affected more by the wind than heavier versions of the same disc. In windless situations, you could aim to the right with a stable or overstable disc and know that it will eventually fade back to the left and end up somewhere near the target. But on some shots, you may not have enough room to start out wide to the right and fade back to the left. In that case, you might choose a disc that is understable, so it turns over to the right during the early part of its flight before it fades back toward the target. You can see why disc selection is the most important choice you make for each throw. Choosing the right disc is the key to staying in bounds and out of trouble. Ideally, there is a perfect disc for each shot to compensate for your disc speed and wind direction. If you're frustrated because your disc always fades off to the left, try an understable disc or a lower speed disc and throw that new disc until you learn how it behaves. And then move up to a faster disc that will fly farther when you develop more power. Now let's add one last detail to consider, which is the angle that you release the disc. Releasing the disc on a flat angle is generally a good place to start. But sometimes you might want to make a slight angle adjustment to reduce your disc's tendency to veer off to the left, or perhaps to compensate for the wind. If every disc you throw tends to fade off to the left, a slight upward increase in your release angle will help the disc turn over to the right before it eventually fades back to the left at the end of its flight. The overall effect of an Anheuser release angle should average out to be a straighter and longer throw. Now let's say you're throwing directly into a headwind. Remember how the additional wind on the face of the disc can make it turn over to the right more than normal. You can compensate for this by releasing the disc on a slight downward or hyzer angle. If you release the disc on a downward or hyzer angle, the headwind should turn the disc up a little and flatten it out. If you throw that same disc into the same headwind, but release it at an anhyzer or slightly upward angle, the disc will probably turn all the way over to the right. When there is no wind to consider, if your typical throw fades off to the left and you're stuck with using that disc, you can compensate a bit by releasing the disc at a slightly upward or anhyzer angle. The more anhyzer angle you put on the disc, the longer the disc should fly straight before it starts turning back to the left. Understanding how discs fly may seem complicated, but it really isn't. Although it does take experience to learn the mechanics of the backhand and forehand throws, and just as important, the flight characteristics of specific discs. You can get by with less than perfect mechanics, but trying to make a disc do what it isn't designed to do is like trying to fly. Using an egg beater and a feather duster. Hey, good luck with that.
Ouch.
Disc selection is critical, especially for beginners. More advanced players can generally compensate for any disc in any situation and figure out some way to make a decent shot. But as a beginner, it's much easier if you use a disc that is appropriate to the speed you throw and the shot that's required. Now you know how discs fly, so get out there and throw some. Because now that you understand the basics, you're going to avoid frustration and play more better. And that is exactly what the Guardians recommend.